Hi, this is Everett from Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Now today I'm going to start a new series called Fun with Watercolors. What I'm going to do is do a small painting. I'm going to go over the list of supplies that I use and show you how I use them. Then we're going to go over how to mix the paints and do some of the brush strokes that I use and give you some final touches on tips and techniques on how I finish up a painting. Also, I'm going to include a downloadable link in the comments section so that you can get a copy of the sketch that I'm using and you can paint along with me. So let's go over the painting board and have some fun with watercolors. The supplies I'm using here, this piece of paper, watercolor paper. It measures 5.5 inches wide and 7.5 inches long. So it's a little 5x7 piece of paper, watercolor paper. A small painting. And I did a prepared sketch on here. Let me take a look at it. It's just, there's 3 pumpkins here on a piece of paper. And this sketch I'm going to put in a downloadable link so that you can get a copy of it and print it off. And then print it on your, and then sketch it on your watercolor paper. And let's follow along. Got my regular palette here with all my colors. And I'm going to be using oranges and reds and maybe a little yellow and some burnt sienna. The 2 brushes I have, this is a 1/2 inch, this is a Holbein Gold synthetic brush, very nice. I like to use this brush. This is on my supply page. And this is a number 6 Holbein Gold. Again, a synthetic brush, but also very nice. And over here I have a bucket of water for rinsing and a sponge for taking the extra water out of the brush. So that's it. So the first thing we'll do, let me get my paint started here. I'll use just a little bit of permanent orange deep, maybe a little bit of red, not too much red. Red goes a long way. This is yellow deep. So I'm getting a variety of yellows and oranges here because we're going to be painting pumpkins, so we'll be using a lot of orange or orange color. And a little bit of burnt sienna. That'll give me another little color to use. And then maybe a touch of a little cobalt blue up here, just to give me a little contrast. A little quinacridone violet, if I get into maybe do any shadows at all. So my palette's ready to go. And a very simple painting like this, we'll start off with the 1/2 inch brush, clean it out nice and clean, pick up some colors. Now I'm going to start with the darker color here. Now what I'm going to do is just follow the outline that I've sketched here, just the basic outline, but I'm going to do a very quick what I call a colorful wash. And I'm picking up different colors here, reds and yellows and oranges. And I'm going to leave some white paper showing, which is okay. It shows highlights. And I'm making this forward pumpkin a little lighter, just so I have some different color here, a little different value. Okay, let that dry a little bit now. I'm going to put in some the darker values now. I'm going to put a little darker, add a little bit of burnt sienna here, a little more orange, touch of red. So what I'm going to do now is going to go in, I'm going to separate these pumpkins by putting a darker value behind one or the other. So let me turn this paper so I can get a nice angle and go behind this one. And this this pumpkin here is behind is going to be darker than the one in front. That separates the two. Also, on this side, it'll separate a little bit of this smaller pumpkin. And remember, I'm gonna have the light source coming this way from the upper right down to the lower left. So this side up here will be slightly lighter. Again, trying to always plan for where the light's coming from. So this area up here will be lighter. The rest is in shadow. Okay. And this other pumpkin over here, gonna make it not as dark, but still add some color to it. And of course there's a little shadow here. Make it slightly, this pumpkin here is not as dark in front of light in front of dark. It can be darker here next to the shadow. Now I can make another layer. We'll add some color, and on the lighter side with a light, and this forward pumpkin, the one here in the front, what I'm going to do is just add a little more color here to give it, again, it's got a shadow side and it's not as dark as the others, but it does have a shadow side away from the light. Okay. Then as far as detail, I'll add the pumpkin stems, mix up a little bit of burnt sienna, a touch of blue maybe, a touch of blue to give it a color change. And I'll go in here and add in the detail. Picking up a little bit, taking the tissue and pick up a little bit of that color, and maybe making this a little lighter back here. Okay. Then I think I'll add some shadows down here. The light's coming from up here, coming across here, the light's coming over. So I'll put the shadows coming this way. Need a bigger brush for a bigger stroke. Change brushes. I got a little bit of quinacridone violet here mixed in with the blue and the brown. Give me a nice shadow color. Cool. Shadows are always cooler than the subject. Give the shadows a little shape, characteristic curves of the shape of the objects. There's no hard edges, no straight edges, they're all rounded edges, so the shadows would have a round edge of some kind. And then I think I'll make just another adjustment here. Take a little more blue, and I'll put a little darker value underneath the edge. The shadow is always darker next to the object and gets lighter as it comes out. So I'll put that darker value inside the shadow. And blend it out. Okay, at this point I'm going to add a background here to make it more interesting. I'll show you how to do a background. I've brought out my natural hair brushes. I've got a 3/4 inch silver brush, natural hair, and I've got a 1/2 inch silver brush, natural hair, and the number 14 round brush. So those I'm going to use to finish the background. And they hold a little bit more water, and they're easier to use with the natural hair. So what I'm going to do, first of all, the first step I do is I locate the background horizon line. So what I'm going to do is about the top third, take the ruler and measure off the top third. And I'm going to draw just a reference line. Okay. All right, now that marks my horizon. I make sure that's above the half mark. The halfway mark's here, so I make sure I'm up at least 1/3 above. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a darker background here, and then as I come forward I'm going to get lighter and then a little darker down here at the bottom as shadow. Okay, so I'm going to go dark to light to darker in the foreground. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wet the top line from the horizon. So what I do here, and let me turn the paper a little bit. So I'm going to pre-wet area above the horizon line around the pumpkins. So I'm not going to wet the pumpkin, let them dry. Just going to work on the background. So I re-wet that with water, and then while it's still wet, I'm going to mix up a little dark. Cobalt blue, a little bit of green, maybe some brown, and maybe a Lutheran crimson, a little bit of red. So I'll make a variable background. So I'm going to start out with a mixture here, and I'll go in, just start putting in those darks, and I'm going to vary the color. Okay, I'm going to let that sit, and I'm going to let that dry. Let that dry until I make the next layer on. Okay, that top part's mostly dry, and I'll go ahead and start with the second part. Now, I'll rinse out the brush, get a nice clean water in the brush, and now I'm going to wet the bottom part, the bottom section. Again, I wet with just water around the edge of the, and I'm going to go over this part down here because I'm going to put the shadow in with another color. I can re-wet that, but I want to go around the pumpkins. So over here, starting with that edge, so putting in the background after you've done a painting is pretty easy with just wetting the area that you don't want to have paint on, and then just adding color into that section. And the way watercolor works is the watercolor will follow the water. So I'm taking advantage of that concept that the watercolor will follow the water. So I'm going to start up here with a light green behind this section, just over here on this side. Now as I come forward, I'm going to get a little darker, so I'll mix a darker green here for the foreground. And I'm going to paint right over top of that shadow I put in before. Now, what I'll do now is I'll take the round brush, the natural round brush, and I'll go back and touch up a little bit around the pumpkins with a smaller brush. What I'm doing is painting in, I'm reducing the little white areas around the edges of the pumpkin. Cleaning it up a little bit. Go on this side. Okay. All right. Now, while I'm here, I'm also I can take some of this burnt sienna, and this is another little touch-up we can do on the pumpkins. Is I can put some of these marks on the pumpkins and give them a little more shape. And in the sketch that I provide, you'll see these lines, and those lines are the parts of the pumpkin that show. Just put a few here as give a little more character to the shape. Maybe I'll put one or two back here just a hint. Okay, now what I usually do after I do a painting is when I finish this one, then I put a mat around it. And then I'd put my signature somewhere down here in the corner, and it's ready for framing, and it'll be a nice little gift for someone. Now let me show you some other examples here of the same painting. I did this one I just finished. Here's another example. A little different background, a little bit different color. Here's another sample. Same setup. And here's even a fourth one. So you can make your backgrounds lighter, darker, make your shadows different directions, and you can come up with your own little bit of a change in what colors you want to use. So I hope you will download sketch that I provided. Get a little piece of watercolor paper, get some paints out, and paint along with me. And I hope you enjoy this little exercise. And there'll be more in the future, so stay tuned to my YouTube channel, subscribe, and be on the lookout for the next video that's on its way.